Basically, I don't think that Jesus Christ's power came from any God. I think it came from his humanity. And I think that we're all capable of doing those same miracles if we just have faith in ourselves and train hard enough.
Really? Interesting. So
Yeah.
you think like you can walk on water, for example?
I do, but I think it's tedious to spend my life training to do that because it's been done before and it didn't change enough people's minds. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Okay. Well,
I'm going to do something much more interesting. I just haven't fully decided what that's going to be yet.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll tell you right now, if I saw somebody walk on water, I think it would convince me. Maybe it wouldn't convince some other people, but I think it would at least get a start with that. What do you think about this, Greg? Is this fall into your beliefs? Do you think that you could do miracles?
I mean, I kind of get where he's coming from. You're saying that if you pray hard enough and concentrate hard enough, you can exceed the limits of what is actually exceed. Is that what you're saying? That there's a human power at work here that you tap into with enough intensity, and you'll be able to accomplish what looks like miracles? Is that kind of what you meant?
I think
that's what I'm. What's that?
I've been on an extremely spiritual journey, and I've been praying with lakes and rivers and animals, and
cool.
I think that there's more that. I think there may only really be one soul, and by tapping into that true soul, you have limitless power.
Okay. Is there anything you could show us, even on this call right now, to like demonstrate some of that power?
Is there anything I could do on the call? I'm not sure.
Okay.
Have you been developing the power? Like, are you talking like an oversoul, like a cosmic conscience type of thing that we all tap into? Because that's a pretty common thing. A lot of people have thought that, like the transcendentalists and people like those, Emerson, for example. And are you getting some miraculous powers? Have you been training yourself in this thing you're doing, and have you been actually getting these powers? And what are they?
So, I think that I can bend air through music, and if I say the right words, I can bend people's souls and inspire them to change the world forever.
Can I ask you what you mean when you say bend people's souls?
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I feel like when I look into a person's eyes, I can see who they really are.
Okay, so that means, does that constitute bending their soul? Like, what does the soul mean in this context? I'm not quite sure.
I think that the definition of the soul has been the thing that's eluded us as humans since the dawn of time. So, and that's kind of mainly what I've been searching for, is just what is the soul. But
you can bend it at least.
I believe that I can. I don't know for sure that I can.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. Well,
I'm not as. It's skepticism is something that I've practiced for a very long time. So, I very recently had a very spiritual experience where I became very convinced that God was leading my footsteps. So I honestly have. I'm pretty sure that I exist.
Okay.
And other than that, I don't really know.
Well, okay. So can you tell me how, like, maybe dive into this experience? Like, was this experience like convincing for you of these kind of beliefs that you have?
So I was standing on the street. There was a sign on the street that said Trinity, and I looked up into the sky, and in that moment, I became convinced that God was real. Later that day...
Wait, hold on. What was it about the sky that convinced you that God was real? You kind of missing me there.
It was just a feeling. I stood on the word Trinity, I ran my foot across the lettering, and looked up at the sky, and became convinced that God was a real thing.
Were you stoned at all? Just asking.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Were drugs involved in any way? I don't mean that in condescending, just asking.
No, I was completely sober at the time.
Okay. What I'm kind of, that's interesting to me, because I think I can put my foot over a sign that says Trinity or somewhere, and I can look up into the sky. I definitely feel some feelings, but I'm not sure how you get from that to concluding that God is real. Like, is there a step-by-step thing there, or is it all just kind of feeling that there's something out there?
So for the rest of the week, while I stayed in that city, every single step I took felt like it was being guided, pushed forward by some kind of force, which made me. And then I met with a lot of street people, and I would go and buy them food and drinks. And several of them called me Jesus, which was very strange.
They called you? That's what they called you?
Yes, that's what they called me, which I thought was ridiculous.
Huh.
Okay, so you don't think that you are. They just thought that you might be.
Well, maybe they were just saying thank you to Jesus because somebody had fed them. I'm not sure. But at least one person called me specifically Jesus, and that was very strange.
John, do you agree with me that maybe feelings are sometimes not the most reliable way of knowing if something is true?
Oh, no, feelings are completely irrational.
Okay. Well, if you agree with me that feelings are kind of irrational and maybe not always the best way of knowing if things are true, why is it that this feeling led you to believe in something that you believe is true?
So, this feeling. That's a very fair question because most of my feelings are completely irrational.
I think that there are people who go out on the street and actually believe that they are Jesus and like go out and say these things. And I think that they do that because they feel like they are. And I'm sure that they feel like they are. But I think you'd also agree with me that our feelings are not very good indicators of what's true. The only thing that really feelings can tell us are how we feel, right? How we feel about ourselves. I'm personally very skeptical of anybody who tells me that they think something is true because they feel something is true. I've talked to several people, for example, that say they know that karma is real because they felt like it was real and this kind of thing happened and they felt these things going on. And, you know, none of those kinds of conversations ever convinced me that karma was a real concept. So I'm wondering if we can apply the same kind of looking glass to this belief here, this belief of God coming from these feelings, and maybe we can come to some different conclusions based on that. What do you think?
I think that I mean, we obviously can come to different conclusions because I believe in gods and you don't. And we've been presented largely with similar evidence, I think. And so I definitely believe that Jesus Christ existed.
Okay.
And I believe that he more or less did all of the things that he said he could do. Or, like, I believe that he walked on water. I believe that he fed the 5,000. I believe that he was a good person.
But you believe that those are human things that people can tap into if they just access a different part of themselves, a spiritual part, or pray hard enough or concentrate hard enough? Is that kind of what your deal is? That's what I'm hearing. Is that right?
So I personally have been doing everything I can to walk in his footsteps. And I think the harder I try to emulate him, maybe the more of his power I can obtain.
Can you, I think I asked this earlier, but like, what's a demonstration of this power? Is there anything that you can do now that you couldn't actually do before?
Good question.
So I don't know if it's real or not, but I feel like I've talked to my friends in their dreams. Like, I feel like when I'm dreaming, I am interacting with other people.
Have you ever felt that way before you started going down this pathway of belief?
No, this is only afterwards.
Okay, well, I'll tell you this, John. I've definitely felt like I've talked to other people in my dreams. And I don't think that I have any special powers because of that. I think that talking to people in their dreams seems like a pretty common phenomenon.
When the other person shares the same experience?
Oh, okay, so that's a bit different. So you're saying your friends actually felt like they talked to you back in their dreams?
Yeah, like I feel like I've successfully communicated with other people in my dreams.
Okay, that's interesting.
Do they feel like you have? Do those people confirm that and go, yeah?
So we talk afterwards, and we've had the same dream. Maybe it's just a coincidence.
It could be. How do we, what could we do, John, do you think, that we could figure out whether or not this is a coincidence? Is there a way that we could test this?
I'm not sure. And I think that there's certain power in faith. So, like, even though I don't know that I could ever prove to you or anyone else that I have any kind of power, I think that by staying around other spiritual people, like in Harry Potter, the J.K. Rowling comes up with this thing. It's like, oh, technology messes with the magic, and that's why they live in these places. Like, maybe she's just right. Maybe the technology is what's destroying the magic.
But how do we know that the magic was there in the first place?
That's a completely fair question. And I think that that's the main thing, because I don't know if it works on people that don't believe in it, or at least not the way I do it. So it's basically impossible for me to prove to anyone that doesn't believe. So, like, evangelism is completely pointless for me.
So that's interesting, because you're saying that it wouldn't convince anybody else, but for yourself, you are still convinced of this belief. And what I seem to be getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be because it's been a series of feelings that you had, or maybe this dream thing. But we also haven't ruled out the possibility that a lot of this could be coincidence on some level. And I'm wondering, is that something that you've ruled out, or is it still possible that this could be coincidence?
So I've been living my life under the assumption that coincidence is a farce and that it's actually all signs from God.
Why do you believe that?
But I'm also open to the possibility that that's a completely ridiculous idea.
Why do you think that's true?
Basically, my personal life is completely fallen apart, and maybe I just am falling back on these irrational beliefs to justify the unfortunate circumstances I'm experiencing in my personal life.
That's interesting. So if we were to look at this in another light, and if we were to say, hey, maybe this is all coincidences, maybe this isn't what we were thinking it was, do you think you would still be able to live your life okay, or do you think that you need these beliefs?
So I think that I need these beliefs. Well, all of the decisions I made, I think, positively impacted a lot of people. So I don't regret any of the decisions I made.
Sure. But can you agree that we can positively impact people and still believe things that aren't true?
I do believe that, yes. So I am open to the possibility that I'm completely lost my mind. But I want to believe that...
Yeah, if you really lost your mind, then you might not be able to tell, right? But
I mean, it sounds more plausible that you're having some type of quasi-delusions, if you want to know the honest God truth. It sounds like there may be spiritual experiences buried in there that could be legitimate, but some of this stuff sounds not necessarily delusional, but quasi-delusional. You're having a lot of religious ideology, like thinking about religion a lot. Religiosity is what they call it. Does that happen to you a lot, where you're thinking all these religious symbolic thoughts? Because that's not necessarily a sign that all is well. Do you have people you trust that you can talk to?
I do. I do believe that Jesus Christ was a good role model, and I think that there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that makes him muddies that story. Like, I think he was a really good person, and I think he tried his best to help people.
I agree.
And I think it was a crying shame that he was executed by the government.
I agree.
Well, John, this has been an interesting conversation. If you can,
I'm
I'd like
to
to
develop my ideas more and maybe call back next week.
Maybe so. I'd love for you to call back on this, John. And you know what? There's some people live in the chat right now that I'm sure would love to talk to you. And we always mention this. We have the Atheist Community of Austin Discord for those who want to keep having these conversations. I bet there are some other people who would like to talk about this too. And I hope I've given you something to think about.
You have, certainly. Have a wonderful day, Objectively Dan.
Thank you, John. You too.
Take care.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. I think in my own life, I've come under delusions of some kind as far as religious experiences. I don't know if I've ever believed that I actually had powers, though. I think that's a new one for me. I mean, obviously, I've heard other people have said this, but I never had experienced that as a Christian. Have you ever experienced that, Craig?
Where I myself had supernatural powers? No. What were some of the quasi delusions you think you had?
Well, I just think like, okay, so I think that I think that the Holy Spirit was leading me in certain situations, basically. But I now attribute those experiences to either emotional duress or just basic intuition working on some kind of level. I don't think there's a supernatural component to it.
Basic intuition, that's when I was starting to talk about real apologetics, because I'm starting to look into real intuition, and there's a whole conversation there. But yes, were you under emotional duress the times you felt like you were being led?
At times, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because I haven't, I don't know if I posted the video yet, but I've had experiences in my life that I thought were where I was intuitive experiences where I handled like a crisis situation by instinct. And I didn't think that was necessarily God leading me at the time, but I did experience that as third party, me doing things that I didn't consciously know how to do. So I was able to protect myself in situations, getting in data from the environment that I didn't really even know how to consciously process, but it was actually real stuff.
Yeah. I think that's my naturalist explanation of that, Craig, would probably be, you know, adrenaline rushes can do some crazy things to people. And I think it brings people to do things and have abilities that they otherwise normally would not be able to do. I remember reading a story one time of a woman who was able to lift up a car because she had like her son was trapped underneath or something like that. You know, just...
I thought that's where he was going. Like he was saying... But he wasn't very clear as to what powers, and it wasn't really clear. That's why I thought he might have.
It was a little bit vague. It was a little bit vague. But yeah, I mean, John, if you're still listening, definitely would like to talk to you again. That was very, very interesting and not typically what we see here. And I'd like to have more conversations like that, to be honest with you.